like it means nothing.
A year ago, a colleague and friend of mine asked me to look into some EU regulation, give my thoughts on it. And looking at the documents at that time, there was not much technical detail, but some ideas how to test consumer devices and their security. I started to think that I don't really know if these really apply to any practical problems. So I looked a bit more and still wondering if this is really practical way of doing it, just commenting on some documentation. So I went out to certain stores and asked them to give me their most sold devices, the most popular devices that are connected in Finland in the internet. I took them apart, I extracted the firmware, captured the network traffic and tried to see what they do in practice, what kind of devices these actually are. So I'm going to talk about upcoming regulation. I'm going to talk about what I learned by hacking these devices, or at least observing what they do. And then let's see if they really are exploitable, if they really are that bad. First, let's go to the regulation part. We have two upcoming regulations. RED is an old one that has been now updated with cyber angles. These three documents contain some requirements of the cyber angle. And this is the most detailed requirements that we have at the moment from EU side. Then we have CRA upcoming, which is a bit later started project, and we don't know that much of the requirements yet. But here is a link if you want to check it out. This is what we know at the moment. And regarding timeline, all of our work at Traficom on this IoT testing started in 2019 with the cybersecurity label launched. And then in 22, RED standard work starts. So it has been now going for a few years. Then in 24, CRA standard work starts. And this year, RED will be enforced. So we are living in quite interesting time when EU actually starts regulating how this IoT security and consumer device security should be done. Next year, CRA has this part of vulnerability disclosure and management and stuff like that. So that part will be enforced next year at some point. And then a year after that, in 2 years from now, CRI will be enforced. So looking at the timeline, we can easily see why we don't really know yet too much about CRA because it started so late, but we know a bit more about RED. So mostly what I'm talking about today is about testing devices against RED. Some of the requirements are quite promising. For example, CRA forces you to have vulnerability disclosure and management and coordination. And that's, I think, quite good thing to have communication and somebody responsible of receiving the reports. RED and CRA will have this requirement for strong and unique passwords, so it means that you can't send out a device with a fixed password of 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. You have to generate it on the device, or you have to let the user generate it, or something like that. And you have to check that it's strong enough. And then we have the content filtering. So for example, smart toys, they are doing a whitelisting requirement on those. So if there is an underage user, and that's the intended user for the device, then the content that is downloaded on the device has to be filtered and it has to be whitelisted, so it's only downloaded from the allowed websites. Some of the requirements are then a bit more troublesome, I think at least. I see some problems with, for example, the backward compatibility. So there are some requirements that say that you can do less secure solutions if your existing infrastructure requires that. That's, I think, should be not allowed, but I understand why manufacturers might want to have it there. And then another is that you can bypass implementing some security features by saying that some other devices in the network take care of that part. For example, you can say that you can only use this device in a network that has been protected by a firewall that has been properly configured. I think that might lead to some problems. About device classification in RED. So what kind of devices are we looking at? I phrased it like this. So when I started going through the devices, I asked these three questions from myself. Is this device connected to a network? Quite a simple question. So is it Wi-Fi or Ethernet or anything like that? So if it is, then the part 1 of RED applies. So then I go through that document. If the device is collecting personal information of any kind, then the second part applies. Also, if it's a smart toy or childcare equipment. Or if the device handles cryptocurrency, money in any way, then the part 3 applies. Okay, that's the boring stuff. Let's go to the actual hacking, because that's, I think, more interesting. So we look at this Eagle manufacturer. They make IP camera of sorts. It's an IP camera intended to be monitoring underage users, recording video and audio. They also have a companion device, a smart sock that records heart rate and blood oxygen, stuff like that. It also works for cats, apparently. So we have 2 devices in this product family. It's clearly, they say that it's a childcare product, collects audio, video, biometrics, connects to a home Wi-Fi, sends all that collected information to the cloud, of course, why not? So let's go to the device classification. Which documents should we read to evaluate if this device is good? What do you think? One and 2. So it's connected to network. It's collecting personal information. It's not handling financial information. So we read parts 1 and 2. Let's go to part 1. Let's open the document and see what's it requiring. I listed some of the most important questions that I feel were sensible to test. So are software updates enforced? I wanted to know that. Let's see. Connect the device to a Wi-Fi and let it do its thing. And it's connecting, it's pairing with the base station, and then after that it's automatically saying that it's going to be updated. If you pull the power from the device or pull the network, it's still going to update. It's not going to let you know or let you use the device before it's updated. I think that's quite good. So let's accept that and move on. Is the device storage secure? Well, if you open the device, you might notice there is a little black box on the corner, and that is quite generic memory module or memory IC in these kind of chips or these kind of devices. And if you plug it in a reader, that's clear text firmware. It can see that it's an operating system. It can see all of the files. None is encrypted. Nothing is basically secure on storage side. So yeah, no, That's not secure. How about vulnerabilities? RED requires that there is no non-mitigated exploitable vulnerabilities. That's a quite good requirement. And if you run CV checker against that firmware that we just dumped, you can find over 1,000 CV matches. Of course, this doesn't mean that those are exploitable, but it's an indication that something might be there. So let's say maybe it could be. Well, how about passwords? Passwords should be unique and strong, so length should be enough and complexity and so on. We, again, check the firmware and find this ini file, and that's, I think, is not unique or secure password. It's also a vulnerability, so we can also cross out the third requirement. So there are vulnerabilities and passwords are not unique or strong. Not going so strong with this one. So let's go with the privacy. So part 2. Again, I selected the 4 requirements. First of all, it requires that all of the sensors that are recording any privacy information are documented, so that user knows what it actually does, what it collects. And they do actually notify the user that it's collecting video, audio, biometrics, sound, and analyzing that, and also saving the clips in the app. Quite fine, yeah, that's fine. User knows now what it does. Is the user notified if usage of this information is altered or protection of it is altered? And this is quite common way of them handling this, so please check with us every now and then if we decide to make changes. I think that's not a good way to do it, so user is not notified. User is asked to ask them if they make any changes. So yeah, no, that's not good. How about third-party access? So does the device send any data to the third parties? And in the privacy policy, if this is just like public information, you just get it from the manufacturer website, and it says that it's collecting name, address, success stories, whatever that means, child's first name, and health condition, baby heart rate, and so on. So they are collecting a lot of stuff just by you using the device, not really opting in or out. How about GDPR? Shouldn't GDPR prevent this manufacturer from collecting and using that kind of information? Well, yeah, no. According to this manufacturer in the privacy policy, they say that they can transfer the data to US and just disregard GDPR. It's not protected apparently anymore. That's, as far as I know, highly illegal, but still they say this in the privacy policy, in the public documentation. I think it's quite crazy. So yeah, that's a no then. How about if you, after reading the privacy policy, you decide that, yeah, I want to stop using this device completely. I don't want to touch it at all. Can a user delete all of the information? So can you just get rid of the information and sell the device or throw it out? Let's go and test it out. Let's wipe the device. And according to the manufacturer, if you want to sell the device, you just go to the app and delete the device. And it will tell you that it will wipe the device and everything it has been collecting has been removed. After we have wiped the device, we again dump the firmware to see if it has been wiped. And we go back to the same file where we find the first password. And yeah, that's again the same password, of course, fixed password, but then we have IP addresses there. I think that shouldn't be there. But we have also my Wi-Fi credentials there encrypted in base 64. So yeah, you can use those if you want. I haven't changed them. Yeah. So that's a no. They don't delete anything on the device. Well, after all of this, I wanted to know who actually built the device, because it was quite clear that the manufacturer that claimed to made the device actually, or sold the device, doesn't have any R&D team or anything. I checked the LinkedIn and they don't have anyone on the payroll. So I wanted to know who actually produced this. I went back to the directory listing and there were 3 interesting files with some prefix that I have now deleted. But it was a 4-letter combination that didn't really mean anything. I typed it in Google and it produced a website with business contact. And if you take that head of R&D name and the company name, the second result in Google was quite interesting. sec.gov. What could it be? It was an original agreement of the seller of the device and the actual manufacturer of the device, agreeing on how much money they would pay to produce the device and schedules and something like that. So now I know how much they paid for the device and who actually made it. That's nice. And after this, I want to know if this is very popular, if manufacturers actually outsource the R&D a lot. So I wanted to make some kind of statistics of it. And here it is. So I went through all of the companies or all of the devices and their manufacturers and checked which of them have internal R&D and which of them are outsourced. So we can see that there is a trend going from healthcare to automation, home automation, and healthcare is a bit more internally produced, or they have more internal R&D, but still over 30% of them have internal R&D. So, outsourced R&D. And home automation is over 50% is outsourced. So that's quite a difficult situation when you try to report any vulnerabilities. So of course, when I found a vulnerability in one of these devices, I sent a notice about that vulnerability. And as you can imagine, if they don't have internal R&D, if they don't have engineers on the company, the email will end up in someone's office. Some head of something will receive it and then pass it forward to the actual manufacturer of the device, and then it will get into a eternal loop. So most of these companies, I didn't even receive any response. So I think that's the biggest problem from my point of view, is that we have no communication with the actual manufacturer. Yeah. So after inspecting the one device, I wanted to see if this really is a problem. So I saw some issues with compliance of RAD, but I'm not really sure if these devices actually are vulnerable in a sense that somebody would hack your home automation device or your smart scale. So this is a cat, if you didn't know. And if you encounter a cat, you don't really know if it's going to attack you or let you to pet him. And the only way to find out if that's a friendly cat or not, you have to approach it and check out what is the communication, how it behaves. And that's the same method I used with the devices. So I tried to figure out how they actually are made, how they communicate. So I, in the end, got 22 of the most popular consumer devices used in Finland in 3 categories: healthcare, home automation, and IP cameras. They are quite equally distributed in these categories. Let's look at first about the communication, because that's usually interesting part, how they communicate outwards. And one of the key points or focus points is the cybersecurity of the communication, like the encryption of the communication. And here is the statistics of the TLS ciphers, and that doesn't tell much to me. I had to consult some experts to decipher what that actually means, but then I found this nice website, cybersuite.info, and they tell me what this actually means. So it means that almost 100% of these cipher suites that are used by these devices are recommended. They are like almost PQC ready communication. So it's actually quite good, surprisingly good. If I look into the endpoints, where do they actually talk to? So we know that the communication is secure, but where does the data end up in? And we can see that mostly it's Google, AWS, then there are some third-party companies, and then Alibaba is one of the host providers. Part of the self-hosted services most likely is also AWS. I just couldn't uncover that because it's hidden behind manufacturer-owned domains. So what we know from this is that data is quite well protected in transit. It's almost PQC ready, but it's also centralized to only few cloud services. So that means that your and your neighbors' home automation data and IP cameras and stuff like that feed into the same AWS infrastructure. So if that's hacked, then all of that leaks out. I think that's a bigger problem than the communication encryption. How about end of life? So when you decide to remove the device from your network or just keeping it in your network for a few years, considering two questions, if it's updated and if the data is removed. First about the data removal. So we know about the one device that it failed, but how about generally with these different categories? 50% of healthcare devices failed to remove the data. 29% of IP cameras and 57% of home automation failed to remove the data. And that's because they didn't implement any kind of communication from backend to the device to actually tell the device to delete its data. So it's just completely lacking there. So it's not even a bug, it's a feature in a way. How about software updates? So 88% of healthcare devices force software updates. So it means that when there's software update, it will automatically, without user intervention, it will update itself, which is nice because then you know that it's actually taken care of. But those devices usually are not connected to the network or internet all the time. They are something that connect to the network maybe once a week or something when you use the device, for example, smart scale or something. It's not always connected to internet. So it's not really that big of an issue if that's not fully secure. But how about IP cameras that are constantly connected to a network? Only 14% force software updates. That's I think quite bad. How about home automation? 10%. Those are also constantly in the network, and only 10% of them are kept up to date. So healthcare devices are getting updates, that's a good thing. But otherwise, the ones that are permanently online, they are not updated, and most of them are not getting wiped when you throw the device out. Going back to the RED, so what is the statistics of RED? 50% of medical devices failed RED, just the 4 questions that I listed there. There are tens of questions that I I found in the documents. But just by these 4, it's 50%, 71% of IP cameras, and 100% of home automation. So this means that 100% of the home automation devices that are in the market at the moment shouldn't be there by the end of the year. But I still wanted to somehow quantify what this actually means. So I created a tool to analyze the quality of these devices. With help of a few friends, we came up with this kind of system where we consider 3 dimensions of cybersecurity of these devices. So privacy, communication, and the device itself, like open ports and stuff like that. And measuring it in 4 levels. Level 0 is no protection, then generic exploit, something you can Google to find the exploit and just hack the device. Level 2 is something you have to actually put some effort into it to somehow customize the attack, somehow get familiar with the device and craft an exploit to it. And then level 3 is a physical access required. So you have to have physical access to hack the device. And considering privacy, for example, that means that level 0, the device broadcasts everything in plain text to the internet. So everything it collects, for example, body temperature or IP camera records video, it would broadcast it to internet unprotected. Then level 1 would be that it's sending it out to third party intentionally. Level 2 would be so that it's sending it out only to the manufacturer cloud. And level 3 is that it's only processing locally. So I think that it's quite clear that, for example, IP cameras are usually not something you want to only process locally. You want to have external monitoring of it. So in some cases it can't be done. But here is how it looks like. So it seems that most of the home automation devices tend to send data to the third parties, like Facebook and stuff like that, without you opting in. So I opted out of everything if I could. So this is just something the device forces user to do. Cameras are a bit better. They don't share that much with third parties, but they still have a lot of cloud storage thing. And then healthcare, which I think should be across the second level to the third local processing level. It's still sending a lot of data to manufacturing cloud and even some of it to third parties. How about protection of communication? So again, level 0 is plain text. Level 1 is something that we know has some issues. Level 2 is basically good enough for home use. And then level 3 is PQC. So something that you have to have actually pay a lot of money to engineer that. And in that realm, healthcare is actually looking quite good. So almost PQC ready. But the cameras and home automation are still lacking quite a lot. So with home automation, it's even more common to have either broken cipher suites or even plain text communication. So there is quite a lot of room to improve. And then the protection of the device. So do we have vulnerable services exposed to the internet? That's a level 0. Do we have open ports exposed to internet? Not really something we can find exploits to, but just open ports. Level 2 is no open ports, and level 3 is again something that you need physical access to. So basically it's connecting via BLE or not at all, or only temporarily connecting to internet. So it limits quite a lot the surface, attack surface of the device. And here we can see that the distribution is different from previously. So most of the home automation devices are actually quite good at this, so they don't expose that much. While cameras are actually more common to expose ports. Of course, they have some services that they need to expose. And healthcare is quite close to home automation, which is a bit worrying because I would like to think that healthcare would be focusing more on this side and making sure that they are not exposing too many ports. So basically, that's the summary of the statistics. We can see that healthcare is winning in all of the categories, which is not really that surprising because it's also governed by other requirements. But we can see some different dimensions where these different categories are lacking. So home automation should focus on communication protection, and then cameras should focus on device protection more. And I would say that if you have a device in the under level 1, that's clearly not really meeting any regulatory standards, so you should do something about it. So yeah, as a summary, good things. 86% of these devices use TLS and cert pinning, so it's very difficult to get in between the communication. 63% are implemented on bare metal. There is no operating system. Why this matters? Why would I care? It's smaller attack surface. It's less of these libraries and these kind of other applications running in the device. So it's in certain ways or traditionally not that easy to attack that kind of device because you have less of those usable things to exploit. 27% are not connected to internet at all, so they are connected via BLE or similar ways. And 58% are only connected temporarily. So it means that if you have a device connecting to internet, communicating to a backend 1 second every week, every time you step on the smart scale, it's very, very difficult to hack the device. It's very difficult to even scan the device with the tools. So that's a very, very hard target. So I think that's quite a good number. Then the bad things. 40% of the devices fail at data removal. 20% are sharing data to marketing companies without any option to opt out. And 46% operate on outsourced R&D and manufacturing, which again makes the communication with the actual engineers quite difficult. So yeah, in summary, communication security is surprisingly good, at least for me that was surprising. But then supply chains are complex and data is collected, shared, and not deleted when the user would like to do that. I think that's quite worrying. And I hope that will change with these regulations coming up, but we will see what these numbers look like in a year or two. And that's my point. I want to come back and tell you in 1 to 2 years if this changed, if the regulation actually has any meaning. And that's what I'm measuring here. So yeah, thank you.